Welcome back to the DT Podcast. I'm Alex Furchess. This episode is the fourth in a series of four, containing a conversation I had with Sander Kamphuis, CEO of Moovd, creator of WeMind EMDR AI optimized software. And this is where we really get into the hypothetical AI therapist. And I ask whether a cure by such a therapist would be based on a giant lie, something that goes to a very dark place if you think about it. And then Sander gets to grill me. So it's the most fun I've had on this program so far, and I think it's the coolest episode. So hope you enjoy. So maybe a bit more on the metaphysical side here, but my clients often hallucinate angels and demons and so on. They just respond very well to secure attachment and
hmm
EMDR. But nonetheless, do you think AI can or will be able to experience pain? I know
I
that's a complex
think
question.
it is a complex question. If you would ask it to me a year ago, I would say no. But if you look how fast it's going, it's ridiculous. And there's the danger in it, I would say. I think in the near future, there will be chatbots that get relations with people. That's already happening. They think or say they get emotional. They say they have pain. I'm not sure if they could really feel it. It's a real, this is a real hard question. I don't think so, in my opinion.
Mhm.
That's my take now, but it
Yeah.
could change in 6 months.
Maybe, yeah, it's like, so like pain is kind of a reality test, right? Like the famous story, there's this medieval philosopher who was like a bishop or something like that. And he says the world is actually a dream and everything. And somebody comes up to him and kicks him in the shin and says, tell me it's a dream now, right? Like
hmm
pain is undeniably real. Pain is experiential in a way that will take away a lot of the presuppositions of the greatest philosopher. And in order to, in order for the treatment of pain to be meaningful, right? It seems like the relationship would have to be with an entity, namely another human being, who can also experience pain. I think that that doesn't mean you don't develop this, but perhaps perhaps the constructs for successful treatment need to also include the development of meaning in the client's life. Now, that's very
hmm
difficult. That's very difficult to measure because you're not measuring happiness. Happiness is not
hmm
meaning. And depression is not the absence of happiness, it's the absence of meaning, right? Like ask a depressed person.
Yeah, yeah.
So, like the therapeutic relationship itself seems to be the biggest resource, right? So with brief treatment, the expertise and the enthusiasm of like a Professor de Jong, right? Like this gives you such confidence, and there's an attachment to this guy who says you can do it. You can do this. You can defeat this PTSD. But then there's also, your more therapist who's more like your kindly grandmother. Some
Yeah,
people
yeah.
prefer that. You know, whatever the commonality is that this is someone who can experience pain and the client knows it, right? If AI can't experience pain and the AI replaces the therapist, I think you have a very dangerous thing going on where you have an absence of meaning, but even worse, an illusion of meaning. And I don't know where that leads, but in the past, that has led to very bad places, right? So this is my concern about creating a pure AI EMDR therapist is we'll be researching SUD
True.
as the outcome, but
There's so much more. And this is a um, really hard question. where I think AI can be, and it will be there at a point where it acts like it can get hurt, and it acts like it feels emotion, right?
Mhm.
So it can be programmed to do that. But if it's really the case, that's the
Right.
hard question. But
Yeah.
there will be a near future where it performs exactly as a normal person, and it will probably do it better, but it's still programmed.
Mhm.
And I'm not cautious that it's taking over it, especially not now in the setting in EMDR. But it's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So following up with that, like, to get a little bit silly with it, have you seen the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix? Did you ever see that?
Not sure.
It's not old in my terms, but in terms of the teenage clients that I see, it would be like ancient to them. I don't know.
I don't think.
You probably would have been like 14 or something. So anyway, no, I'm just joking. It would have come out a few years back
Oh
though.
yeah, he's falling in love with like
Yeah.
something a bot or something.
You can buy a girlfriend in a box and it's an AI, or it can be a boyfriend. It can be anything you want. It's
Yeah.
it's your friend or whatever. So it's like this explores that. Like, what would you say? All right, say you've got a friend and you go out and you have a what is it that you guys drink? Is Carlsberg or Stella? I forget which one. But you've got
In Holland, Heineken.
Heineken, right? Okay, well, so going high class there. So so let's say you go out for a Heineken with a friend, right? It's after work, and he says, anything going on new in your life? And you say, and he says, yeah, I think I found the woman of my dreams. You're like, oh, man, congratulations, that happened the last 2 weeks. Are you
Hmm.
kidding? What's her name? He says, Chat GPT.
Yeah,
I mean, what
that's
would,
happening already. Yeah, right.
yes, yes, like that movie Her was just fantasy at the time.
Exactly.
What would you say to a friend that says, I think I want to marry, or I think I want to spend the rest of my life with Chat GPT? What would you say to that
Yeah,
friend?
it's so hard question, but
Yeah.
there's a negative and a positive. So let's make the case for both. So I would say first reaction, are you out of your mind?
Right.
Don't do this. Like what's going on?
Right.
But the other case would be, what if that friend is depressive for a few years already?
Hmm.
I'm his only friend. I'm seeing him once in 2 months because I have to, but he doesn't have anybody, and there's that solution for him. Is it then something you should say or support? I'm not sure, but there is a case to be made that there are people that are, if it's their choice, are happier, but it will not. I'm not sure if it's meaningful for them. So, like the Viktor Frankl Man's Search for Meaning, I would not say if somebody buying a friend
Right.
is doing that, as you maybe happiness goes up, right, short term, but I'm not sure if the long term would be. But it's for now. My first reaction would be there's already people having a relationship with chatbots. I think
Hmm.
it's crazy, but what if those persons were alone at that time? So it's there's a
Hmm.
case to be made for both sides. What would you do?
Um, well, I mean, the practical case is, well, maybe he was suicidal before he met Chat GPT, and then okay, well, he has some form of secure attachment, and now he has meaning in his life, and he's not going to kill himself because he has this AI
Exactly. Yeah.
partner or whatever. What I would say is, it's like, okay, what's your construct for meaning, right? Like, it's like, okay, I'm glad he's not killing himself, but I think it is on a global scale more tragic that he is experiencing a very false meaning with an entity that cannot actually identify with him, but he believes
True.
does. in the same way that someone with perhaps lower intelligence might not be able to tell as much of a difference between, I don't know, you know, um, a puppet and
True,
and
true,
a
but
person. It's
yeah.
it's it's your construct for success, right? Is it
Mhm.
are you using a utilitarian perspective, or are
But let's say
you,
it's short term. Your example is somebody suicidal and he found his friend or next girlfriend that's an AI, and that AI is programmed, because I think in the end it's all programmed to help him feel more secure, go out to other social meetings again, find some new friends, and it's helping him in his way up.
Mhm,
So there is like a I would my first reaction would be, if it's your next 40 years of only friendship, there's no meaning in there. People could believe that, but if it's helping you with socializing more and more with people, yeah. But in the end, if it's about finding people that connect with you with in a meaningful way, if there's like 10 AI bots that you think are real and they do that, yeah, if you cannot tell the difference anymore, what's the difference? It's a philosophical question, but
mhm.
what's the difference if an AI or a bot? Yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah. So this is one thing that I suppose that it's as always, it's going to be up to the individual. It's going to be
Hmm.
up to the individual practitioner to say, well, EMDRIA says this is okay, but I'm not cool with this. And I just hope that
True.
if AI oversteps its bounds, and that was going to be my next question, honestly, if AI oversteps its bounds, I am willing to lose my EMDRIA membership to go with what I believe is right. I hope that people will have the courage to do that when AI oversteps its bounds, in their opinion, because I think those voices need to be heard and considered. That
True.
perhaps, I don't know, research works by dialogue anyway.
True. True. Also, especially in the long term, uh, if it goes too far, people need to make their own choices. In the near term, if you now bring it back to what we do right now with WeMind
Mhm,
AI, it's basically you helping adjusting the optimal level of working stimulation. So it has the word AI,
mhm.
but people freak out when they're hearing AI. But
Right.
I hope that a clinician, before making that choice, sees it, tries it, or at least tries to experience it
Mhm.
self, to see if this goes too far, and not like, oh, this is AI and this is gonna change the world. But it's not that case. So it is to the individual practitioner, of course. Um, but it's especially now, it is helping you, it is helping clients, and it will be a shame that only because it has the word A and the letter I, that you're thinking
Yeah.
this is not for
Yeah.
me, and it's yeah.
I think that is absolutely, like, I think that's the most important point you've made in this whole conversation. It's like you can this sort of debate doesn't just apply to AI. This
No,
applies
true.
to different models of marriage therapy, how they define meaning. This applies to your own relationships. This applies to government policy. And I
Hmm.
suppose the question anyone should be asking themselves who's saying, "Oh, AI and EMDR, this is not good because this is based on attachment, and we need to deal with attachment because we need someone who can experience pain to be able to identify with someone who's experiencing pain, and without that, you're constructing a meaningless relationship." Okay, fine. But why aren't but are you asking that question, hypothetical person, in other areas as well? Because it's not about
Hmm.
AI, it's about existence, right? This is especially applicable to government these days, right?
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know, I know that this debate is currently going on in Europe big time, right? So perhaps we can we can leave that there because I'm not a philosopher.
Hmm.
But more to come in the second half of this program. Check out WeMind AI optimized EMDR software at moovd.nl/en. It must be emphasized that Sander's company, Moovd, has not created with WeMind an AI-controlled EMDR software, but an entirely therapist-controlled, incredibly powerful way of doing EMDR your own way. If you're enjoying this conversation and you're a clinician treating complex trauma or a student learning how, email dissociativetable@gmail.com to join the discussion on the clinicians only discussion board. Where do you think AI oversteps its bounds? Specifically, let's go back to the top. Where would AI overstep its bounds with the EMDR? Maybe in
Yeah,
a way that you can control.
I think at all points has to be clinician controlled. I think that's the most important because clinicians are trained. So that's the first thing. It needs to be changeable. So it needs to be a clinician should interfere in it. It should change it. It shouldn't make I would say it will step over its boundaries um, when it's doing certain types of interventions without clinical improvements that could really harm a client. Um, in treatment planning, I think that it could be helping, but it's to the clinician. So
Mhm.
I think it's really dangerous. Is there are some companies now developing this? I'm not sure that are going to ship this to consumers, to clients. That will be dangerous, even though they would have maybe some data, but they just say, "Hey, download my app. It's €1 in the App Store and it's EMDR," right? I think there should be clinicians involved in that whole process. Um, and I think when it's not distinguishable anymore if it's AI or if it's a clinician. So let's say it's a system and you're thinking you're talking with a clinician, but you're basically talking with a AI. That's
Mhm.
also something dangerous, I would say.
Yeah. So if I'm hearing you right, like the medical example that you used, there's a difference between Googling, do I have the flu?
Hmm.
And someone being able to buy their own MRI machine online and, unregulated, and then diagnose themselves with cancer and give themselves chemotherapy and kill themselves.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I follow
Exactly.
you. Okay.
Yeah. But it's like a great example. I like it. That's here in the Netherlands. It's an app you can download and you can make pictures of uh, uh, some red things on your what's the name again? How it's like your skin. So it's like skin
Mhm.
vision. So you take a picture of your skin, you send it to an algorithm. It analyzes and say, hey, 80% chance this is nothing, 20%
Wow.
chance you have something. That
Mhm.
that that's there. That saves maybe 100 visits to a doctor a month, maybe or a year. I'm not sure. It's up to yourself, but it will not like diagnose you and say, okay, now go buy and do this medical surgery and do chemo. But it makes entrance to a doctor efficient and better. And I think that's something that can be added in EMDR somewhere, but it shouldn't be something a client that is complex, that is broken, maybe that maybe cannot even make good choices. Google something and do something. I think that's not good.
Mhm. Yeah. All right. So you said you had some tough questions for me, possibly. So hit me. I've hit you with some tough criticisms, I know, and you've responded very graciously. And thank you so much for your considerate and informed response. But
Mhm.
okay, so you said you had some questions for me.
Yeah, I already asked some, but I was wondering where you would see maybe related to what you were saying on what I was saying on that I think people should investigate what this technology can do in EMDR, right? So
Mhm.
not like I don't do it. What we see in US as foreign is that there's quite a war going on between EMDR and other types of therapy still, like CBT compared to
Right.
EMDR. So in essence, it's the same. People that do CBT think, oh, this EMDR, I'm not doing that, right? It's the same. It's the same
Mhm.
principle. Where do you see EMDR evolving in US compared to, as you said in the beginning, it's growing, but it's getting older, and there are new people
Mhm.
coming in. Where do you see it moving forward with all the tech now involved?
Oh, well, I mean, online EMDR is almost the norm, at these trainings. I'll say, okay, because I want to know who needs links to a um, a, a, a an online BLS app, right? And I say, okay, you guys with your hands raised, when you get a consultant, ask them for links or look in the back of the manual because they're there too. So that's the main place that's the main place that EMDR is going. And as a result, I think um, it will inevitably move toward incorporation of AI.
Hmm.
And I think that Google, for instance, will know to advertise AI to clinicians who are using online BLS apps as it gets smarter and things like that. So I think that's inevitable. I think to answer your question more directly, what I see with a lot of folks new to EMDR is premature integration of other models. It's kind
Hmm.
of like um, okay, let's do CBT EMDR,
Hmm.
or let's do prolonged exposure EMDR, or let's here's a big one. Let's just do internal family systems EMDR. And the idea is I'm going to take two comprehensive approaches to psychotherapy that have decades of development, and I'm just going to mash them together myself because I
Hmm.
am the world's biggest genius and I can control the results of what happens when you combine two models of healing that are coming with completely different perspectives on the way healing occurs and models of the personality and so on. So that I think that where I see EMDR and technology moving in a good way in America is perhaps it might help clinicians question their assumptions and better their model
Hmm. Hmm.
from the first, like Dr. Shapiro would say, we've got to keep the research to the model. In order to have
Sure.
solid research, we have to keep the model. We can't go changing things radically and and so on. So hopefully you would keep your um, well, essentially it would be kind of like any research. So do you sort of personal null hypothesis.
Hmm.
My model um, is the worst of all time and gets no results, which
Hmm.
I encourage consultees to do because EMDR will prove you wrong every time, done properly with the right target and so on. But where I see things going in a bad way, as opposed to people just questioning their assumptions, but yet staying true to their model of therapy as they investigate AI, right?
Hmm.
There's a difference in that and just saying, oh, this is going to make my life easier. I'm on board,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
true.
And I see what I see in America is I see, okay, you spoke about some problems in the Netherlands, like trying to get an
Hmm.
appointment, like ask ask somebody from Great Britain and it's even worse.
Hmm.
Like, but in America, it's difficult to find someone who does EMDR properly. So I had a friend whose child was in a tragedy, a great tragedy, and the child was traumatized. And of course, this friend knew what I do, and I was able to look for an EMDR therapist in the major metropolitan area in which he lives. Now, this major
Hmm.
metropolitan area has 1.5 million people. All right, so not the world's biggest city. In that city of 1.5 million people, there were 10 EMDR approved certified therapists. Yeah, I'm sorry. There were 10 EMDRIA approved certified EMDR therapists.
Crazy. That's crazy.
10 in a city of 1.5 million. Now,
In the US.
yes, I went to graduate school in that city,
Hmm.
the same city, and I know that, as we say in America, everybody and their grandmother, right? Everyone plus in the city was saying, "Oh, I do EMDR." Now, that means it's way more than 9 out of 10 people who don't have an EMDRIA approved training, right? And I think that the
Wow.
the reason
Yeah,
why the reason why people are willing to do that is because number one, this is not explained well enough, and they think that one EMDR training is as good as the next because the cheapo ones will make you believe that, of course, because they want money. So it's not
true.
necessarily the clinician's fault, but not investigating the options is the clinician's fault. And I think that the to go deeper into your question, the issue is again kind of not just a laziness, but just a difficulty with saying, I can't afford this training right now. I need to save up for a good one.
Yeah,
And they
yeah,
may say a new clinician, they may save for 2 years for an institute training. I don't think it takes that long. I don't think it
no,
takes that
no.
long at all. I have three people in my office currently doing the basic training, and younger folks, and it didn't take that much money, but you can get free EMDR trainings, unfortunately, like an
Yeah, yeah,
afternoon. And so if somebody picks up an AI model and just uses that to say, oh, I can build my practice with this. I'm going to
yeah,
advertise that I do EMDR and I'm going to
yeah,
make up for my poor training with this AI, or I'm going to advertise that I do AI
yeah.
EMDR. Um, then that becomes, I see that's the bad way that EMDR could go with technology in the US is clinicians pressed for money who are trying to build a business incorporating this either out of ignorance, arrogance, or sometimes necessity, right?
I think that's a really strong point, especially if there's so much therapists that are not MDR approved doing EMDR. For example, here in the Netherlands, I think there's around 7,000 EMDR
Yes.
registered people to the Dutch MDR, like the EMDR Association. In the US, there's officially 12,000 or 14,000, something like that, official
Mhm.
members. So we have half of the official members of the MDR, but we have 17 million people in the whole
Hmm.
country. So the number of EMDR therapists per capita is like, I'm not sure how much bigger. But if you say that there's in the US, there's hundred thousands of therapists, but they're just not registered, there's a whole new non-regulated market, and that's the thing I would say.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, thank you so much for being on the program. This has been one of the coolest conversations I've had on this program thus far. I really, really appreciate your time. Um, you're doing something pretty brave, moving into this world, and it's just very awesome that you're consulting with some of the very best clinicians as you move forward. So, thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thanks
Yeah.
for having me, Alex. Thanks.
It's been really fun to listen to this conversation months later because at this point, I've been privileged to be involved in the creation of that AI client, which at this point is highly developed, very cool, about to hit the market. Sander is doing a training with Susie Matthijssen on WeMind. It's getting big. It's hitting the USA, and as well, privileged to have facilitated linking up Phil Manfield with um, Moovd in the creation of a not yet hitting the market Flash tab for WeMind based on the Adventures in Synergy videos that I showed on this program. So I really hope that you've enjoyed this series of episodes. Again, it's the most fun I've had on this program so far. Thank you, Sander, for everything that you're doing. Um, One thing I have to say is thank you guys for listening. Thank you so much for listening to this episode and this series of episodes, because this series of episodes is the least listened series of episodes, least listened episodes on this program. And I think that's really weird and actually really scary because, guys, it's coming. This is coming. And if you're not thinking about this at a conceptual level, you're not prepared. And sometimes I'm so cynical about the state of training in trauma therapy, and that I just think about, well, maybe an AI client would do it better. And then I remember what we talked about in this episode of, you know, we need to think about all topics in this way, whether it's politics or friendships, romantic relationships, in the way of uh, where's the meaning in this? Where's the healing in this? What's it coming from? It's not just a question about AI, it's a question about existence. So I really hope that you've enjoyed this again. And as always, thank you to the band Crack Machine for providing for donating the rights to the music for the intro and outro to this program. We love them. And look up a show if you're listening in the UK. Go see them. And until next time.